You know, so that's the education I got. But when I got out of college,
wow, it's not
yeah,
like
and then I had a girlfriend who was in NYU, and she was a Jewish girl, and I had no idea. I didn't know anything about Jews or Jewish girls, or just I knew about Jewish girls. I didn't know about the culture, and that really kind of where it woke up around here. Just kind of started getting an education about the life around you. I don't think schools really do that. They don't teach you about the world you live in. They teach you about everything else outside of your world.
You want to catch that?
That's what I love about New York.
I know. It's noisy.
How the world just comes into focus.
So you didn't come over here in high school. It wasn't until after you finished college that you appreciated more the history and the energy of this area.
Yeah, and when I went to college, I wrote a screenplay that became The Gangs of New York.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, you wrote the screenplay that became The
I wrote
Gangs
the
of New York?
screenplay. Yeah,
and they stole it from you?
Yeah, I was robbed in Hunter College by the professors. Scorsese.
No, just a second. I gotta get. Come on, look me.
Yeah,
Take your sunglasses off. Look me in the eye.
Okay,
You wrote.
I wrote The Gangs of New York, the film that you see by Scorsese. That's my film. The skeleton of the film is the very skeleton, the story of the film, the characters.
Can you prove that?
Yeah, because I'm a member of the Writers Guild, and my screenplay sits in the Writers Guild of America.
Really?
Yeah, I did that in 1998. I wrote the screenplay.
And Hunter's College?
Yeah, I did too. I did a whole year there, and I took 2 courses where I started. They rip you off, and what they do is they actually rip you off. And I can prove it because there are so many scenes in the film that I actually wrote.
And you can prove it.
Yeah, because Scorsese had his scouts at NYU. He was teaching at NYU at the time, and he had his scouts here at Hunter College, because Hunter College Film School and Hunter Film School and NYU Film School, they got together. And what they do is they farm for ideas. So the teacher who's actually teaching you screenwriting, he's actually stealing your ideas. And not only is it coincidental, but one of the students in the class was actually a distant cousin of Scorsese. His name was Salvatore, and he was currently writing a screenplay about being a waiter in a restaurant where Joe Gallo, the famous gangster, it was a gangster. So I was like writing this gangster film, and it's exactly as you see it in the movie. In the beginning of the film, he lives in a brewery with his father. The father gets killed in Act 1, which is exactly what happens in the film.
Wow.
And the skeleton, they took the skeleton of my story. And the characters that I created, there's a character named Johnny who's based on me, who dies in the film. And there's a character in the film named Johnny who dies, and he gives up the guy who kills him. There's a scene when they're in a house and they're stealing something, and the whole house goes on fire. That's a scene right out of my screenplay. The whole confrontation at the end of the film between him and they call him Bill the Butcher in the film, but the real character's name was called Captain Rinder, who was a U.S. Marshal who was the leader of the gangs. And when I was a kid, since I grew up in New York City, I went to high school right across the street from the First Settlement graveyard. So I was
go over there.
Yeah, so I was exposed to so much history here in New York City that was my ambition when I went to college, was to study screenwriting and to become a screenwriter.
And my God, you did. It was good enough to get stolen.
Yeah, so that's what
would you have been paid if they did it right?
Well, I learned a lesson. They say you're supposed to get an agent, and you're only supposed to give a few pages, and you're not supposed to tell people about your ideas. When you're in a college setting, and you're sitting there with other people you don't know, and you're making Xeroxes of your work, and you're doing these readings, which is what they do in Hunter College. I went on a warpath. I mean, I literally stormed in on them. I was like, where's my screenplay, Because the guy took off with it in the summer after I had finished it, and I got a B+, which I should have gotten an A, bastards.
If he gave you an A, he might have busted himself, right?
Yeah.
You could say, I can't give a B+.
I've had many opportunities. You see, when my mother and I went to see the film when it came out, right before she died, and we hired a lawyer to get a lawsuit, to start a lawsuit. And then my mother died, and then I went into a whole different world. I went into bankruptcy and stuff. So I had to put that off for a while.
Wow.
But I'd like to get back on track with that. I'd like to have my day in court with Scorsese. I think Scorsese steals ideas. I think a lot of his films are almost like remakes of other people's movies. And
that's kind of sad that somebody doesn't have their own creativity going, but they really want to be in that.
Yeah, I just saw A State of Grace yesterday, a film with Sean Penn and Gary Oldman. And I said, this is The Departed. It's the same movie.
Wow.
I just think Scorsese just kind of, he has these scouts, and they go into the colleges, and they steal ideas. They steal your ideas.
Well, I'm not going to ask you about any ideas you might have, but I just do want to say that New York is so inspiring. And when I go around, because I'm a California person, it's all so fresh to me. And yeah, when you go to the cemeteries and you look at the dates that people were buried, and you kind of think what was going on then. But when you're actually on the land itself, you get a type of inspiration, and it makes you think. And I like to go around Chinatown right after I watch the sunrise over the East River, because it's quiet.
Oh, it's so beautiful over there.
And I was at 5 Points, and I was just thinking about that the other day.
That's me. I used to walk around here. I've been to the slave graveyard down by Ground Zero. I was there when they first discovered it, and I actually was allowed to stay. I was an archaeology student at Hunter College. I studied anthropology. So
Screenplay writing?
Yeah, I studied the anthropology of New York City, and I learned about the 5 Points. And I studied with professors who were digging the 5 Points, and they brought in a big skull of a pig. It was a kill site. They found some kill site, and they went down the stratum. It was a big pig, the skull.
Oh, a big pig.
Oh, the kill sites. The butchers. They would go down in the Bowery was where the sheep were. There were a lot of sheep, and but they found at the lowest strata they found pigs, which means that the first settlers were raising pigs, but the pigs were too dependent, and they found that raising sheep was economically feasible.
Oh, really?
So,
what do you know about Union Square? I heard that's because it's